Hello and welcome to this series on the history of Galicia and Galicianer Jews. I'm so glad you've joined us. Over the next dozen or so mini lectures, we're going to survey some of the leading lights of this wonderful province on the eastern edge of the Austrian Empire and try to get a sense of how modern Jewish history is in many ways represented by this province. Galicia does not have the best reputation in history, especially in Jewish culture. There's a sense of Galicianers as being coarse, uncouth, uneducated, boorish, corrupt, and so on. And this is the product of some of the people we're going to look at down the road. But actually the history is quite different. Galicia produces some of the leading lights that define the modern Jewish experience. For example, we'll begin by looking at some of the maskilim, some of the enlightened Jews, the leaders of the Haskalah, who produced some of the most pioneering visions of what Jewish life could be in terms of education, religion, and more. For example, Yosef Perl and Shlomo Yehuda Rapoport. We'll take a look at how they transformed Jewish life in ways that anticipated far broader changes down the line decades later, but also how the movement they fought so viciously, so harshly, the Hasidic movement that they hated so much, also develops in Galicia in wonderfully unique, exciting ways in the 19th century, especially the House of Ruzhin, but many others as well. We'll take a look at some of the Jews who strike economic success, people like Yaakov Feuerstein and Emil Byk, who are vilified by Orthodox, vilified later by the Zionists, but actually are advocating a integrated, acculturated, but still Jewish identity. And you can see in the upper right corner, for example, the synagogue constructed by these Jews in the town of Drohobych to display their sense of what it means to be an integrated Jew in the modern world, again, coming out of Galicia. We'll take a look at the artists that are produced by this economic success and opportunity. People like Karl Franzos and Maurycy Gottlieb. On the left, Franzos is pushing an identity of German Jewish nature. The idea that we can be in the modern world both a German and a Jew. That was the dominant identity in the mid-19th century. And on the right, we have Maurycy Gottlieb, who is talking about Polish Jewish identity, proudly Polish, proudly Jewish, and trying to display that, like Franzos, through his art, in his case, painting, not literature. Both highly integrated, using their art form as an expression of their identity, trying to influence others, and in fact being seized upon by other Jews as models of what it means to be a modern Jew. Proudly integrated, proudly German or Polish, and proudly Jewish. We'll look at the birth of other forms of modern Jewish politics in the late 19th century, especially Zionism, and people coming to Zionism in different ways, because it's not often realized how important the Galicianer Jewish nationalists were to the worldwide Zionist movement. People like Adolf Stand, who come to the Zionist movement as a sort of disillusioned integrationist, a Polish-speaking, Jewishly not especially educated man who decides that the future is in Jewish nationhood, not in Polish nationhood, or coming from a more Jewishly educated background, men like Yehoshua Thon on the bottom left-hand side, who joins the Zionist movement with Stand, trying to express some kind of more authentic Jewishness through the Zionist movement, eventually becoming a long-standing member of the Polish Sejm in newly independent Poland between the wars. Men like Ahron Marcus, a devoted and deeply religious Chassid living in Krakow, who is enlightened and awakened and excited by the appearance of Theodor Herzl and dedicates many years of his life to uniting the Hasidic and Zionist world at a time that they seemed so far apart, that the Hasidic movement seemed almost defined by its anti-Zionism. And then finally, men like Laibel Taubes on the bottom right, who is one of the first people among the Jewish nationalist movement who's able to reach the traditional masses in ways that men like Stand and even Thon simply couldn't do. They couldn't speak the language literally and metaphorically of the masses to attract them to these new ideas. All of them developing and deepening Jewish national consciousness in pioneering and very influential ways. And finally, we'll look at the interwar period, the climax of productivity of this province on the eve of the Holocaust. We will look at Sarah Schenirer, who establishes the Beis Yaakov movement, the most successful and important Orthodox girls' education movement of the last century, coming out of Krakow, out of Galicia, for reasons that are specific to Galicia, that are specific to the history of that location. We'll look at Bruno Schulz, also coming out of Drobich, like Gottlieb, who produces a modernist canon of literature in Polish language, identifying as a Jew, as a Polish Jew, and ultimately dying as a Polish Jew during the Holocaust. And Shai Agnon, coming out of Ozjasz, who survives in Israel and is talking about the history of the Galicia, not in Polish, but of course in Hebrew, ultimately winning a Nobel Prize. And finally, and sadly, the story of Emanuel Ringelblum, the famous historian of the Warsaw Ghetto, who establishes the Oneg Shabbos archive to document the life and destruction of the Warsaw Ghetto, but also trying to understand why it is that almost all of the most important historians of the Polish Jewish experience in interwar Poland are coming specifically out of Galicia. What was it about the province, about that place, that produced all of these leading academic lights? We will look at all of these in the next dozen or so lectures. I welcome you to join us. Thank you.